Jupiter, what you see here, is the largest planet in our solar system. Is it a Jovian planet or a terrestrial planet?
Jovian.
Jovian because it has a thick layer of gas. It's a giant planet. As a matter of fact, everything in our solar system shines because of the sun. If you turned off the sun, it would all go black. You wouldn't see any of the planets. However, after a while, you would begin to see a faint glow, and that would be Jupiter. Jupiter is massive enough that it generates enough heat that it actually is moved into the light range, the visible portion of the electromagnetic spectrum, so it would actually show a very faint halo of light. And some say if you could cause Saturn and Jupiter to crash into each other, you could actually produce a small sun. It would have enough mass to go into main sequence and become another sun. So it's a large planet with lots of gas. You can see in the upper atmosphere it has turbulence, which are essentially large hurricanes swirling. There's one in particular called the red spot, or the great spot of Jupiter, which is a hurricane. And how long has that hurricane been spinning its way across the surface? At least 400 years, because when Galileo first turned his spyglass to the heavens, he saw it. Not only did he see the great spot Jupiter, but he saw the moon, the 4 moons, which are called the Galilean moons, because Galileo was the first to see them. Well, here's a close-up of the turbulence there in the upper atmosphere. This is Jupiter. It looks kind of strange. We're looking at the poles, which we can now because they sent the probe. The Galilean probe sent 2 or 3 probes by Jupiter that's taking pictures from different angles from what we can see from Earth, and of course much more detail. And they discovered that Jupiter has an aurora borealis, northern lights, like the Earth. And we'll talk about what those are when we get to the atmosphere section. Anyway, just some images of the great storms. Oh, just to give you an idea of scale, you can put the Earth inside of that hurricane twice. You can put 2 Earths inside of it. Okay, so we're talking about a storm twice the size of the Earth. And if you look at it up close, you can even get a sense that it's an eye. There's a depression in the middle because it's a low pressure cell that's spinning its way around. This is what you would see with a good pair of binoculars, maybe on a tripod so it hold it steady. These little dots here are the Galilean moons. That's Jupiter, and you may even see some of the streaks in the surface. This is a image that has just shown the 4 Galilean moons and their names: Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto. And you know what those names are from? They're women. You know Europa if you had my Roman world class, right? They're all women that Jupiter seduced. Jupiter is the Roman name for Zeus. So it makes sense, right? It's very clever because he seduced them. He's pulled them into his gravitational influence as Jupiter. So those are mortal women that he's taken advantage of. Anyway, this just shows some of the features on each of the moons. This is a photograph taken of Io. You can see the shadow on the surface of the atmosphere. So it's very close to the surface. Matter of fact, so close that the gravitational tidal forces are actually ripping the surface apart and creating enough friction and heat that it's become molten. So there are volcanoes. Each of those looks like a big pizza, doesn't it? Not a pizza. It's a moon. But the yellow there is not cheddar cheese or whatever Swiss cheese. It's sulfur at the surface, and the dark areas are not mushrooms or anchovies. They're actual volcanic craters. And when one of the probes went by, it was actually erupting. Here's a large volcano, and they got a photograph of an eruption right there. And so, other than planet Earth, this is the only active volcanism that we've seen in our solar system. You can see Jupiter in the background. If you look carefully there, that black or that blue spot, that's the eruption. And that's a pretty large eruption. Matter of fact, it's large enough that some of the debris from the eruption actually reached escape velocity from the gravitational field and went out into space. They've recognized there are very faint rings around Jupiter, much like Saturn has very clear rings, but Jupiter also has rings. But they're very faint, and they think that the rings around Jupiter may be some of this debris from the moons that have shot out and been captured in the gravitational field. So you can see the lava, molten sulfur there pouring out the surface. Sulfur is a brimstone. So this would be sort of like hell. Maybe that's where hell is. A lot of the sci-fi movies have those types of planets that are like molten. There's one in Star Wars, molten planet. It's one in, I think, the Riddick. The Riddick trilogy has an inferno type planet, so that's not a planet though, it's a moon. This is Ganymede, which is just a big chunk of ice.